Welcome back to our special series from SalesProcess360. I'm your guest host, Lindsay Young, and I'm looking forward to spending time again with Brian Gardner, founder of SalesProcess360, to dig into our special topic, the role of the CEO for CRM. And as we talk further about the CRM journey, how are you doing today, Brian?
Great. How are you, Lindsay?
I'm doing great. So today we're talking about the rollout,
Yep.
which I would argue is just as critical as all of the other steps we've covered so far in this series. So let's start with the rollout itself. So give me an overview of what that looks like, especially for maybe companies who haven't been through a formal CRM rollout before. When the
Yep.
CRM has been tested, tweaked, it's ready to go. So what happens next?
One key thing that you said was it was tested and tweaked and it's been signed off, by the team, the CRM team, the super users, the stakeholders, the CEO for CRM, and we're ready to go, right? So, I'm a believer that the training should be conducted and driven by the super users. Um, the users that they're peers to each other. I think there's just a better acceptance to the training when the super users ultimately give the training. Typically, I like to recommend it being in smaller groups by branch or by region. I believe these smaller groups with face-to-face, so that's another thing. I'm a big believer in the first session being face-to-face if possible. Nothing beats that. But these smaller groups promote interaction, which is so key when you're doing the initial training. I've been involved in starting the training off along with the CEO for CRM, maybe to kick it off and kind of promote the high level. But the CEO for CRM always needs, in my opinion, to kick off the training. The super users will use the day in the life scripts. So there's that day in the life scripts popping its head up again. So we're going to use the day in the life scripts, which drive the training, which promotes very interactive, heavy exercise type training. I'm also a believer after the training, again, very interactive, make the training interactive with day in the life scripts. And then at the end, I'm a believer in these rapid fire gamification type, where you kind of challenge people on what they've learned, make it a game, get them involved. Again, it ties it all together. And then after that, follow-up sessions are so important. This is not a one and done type training. You train them and say good luck. I think it's so important to have follow-up sessions. 60 to 90 days, I believe, are just critical for the long-term acceptance and adoption to CRM. I believe in having weekly or no more than bi-weekly meetings the first, let's say, 60 days, 2 to 3 months. Having the user discuss best practices, Q&A, allow for Q&A, and give the users to tell their stories on how they're using the system so their peers can hear that. That's kind of high level, Lindsay. Hopefully that's, but it's training. I guess the summary there is super users, I believe, should do the training. CEO for CRM needs to be involved with the kickoff and then have follow-up sessions for the first, 2 to 3 months for sure, to continue the Q&A and best practices and get your team involved in those follow-up sessions.
So throughout this series, you've talked about promoting the why. So that's especially important now in this stage. So what does promoting the why mean in the rollout stage when team members can start to see it for themselves?
Well, so the why, and then team members starting to see this for themselves. Again, at this stage, remember, we're just training, we're just starting off. They haven't had the time in the CRM to really see the why yet. And again, in this initial training, in the follow-up sessions, you're trying to promote that why in follow-up sessions, but the initial training, they just haven't seen the why yet. So it's so important to start the training off and presenting the why. Again, I usually do this with the CEO for CRM, or if it can't work out, we train the super users to give the why. We kind of give them the presentation. So there's standards across the company on what we're promoting as the why. But it's so important, I believe, to start the training with the why and again, set the stage. And some common areas that we talk about for the why. I know we maybe have discussed this in other sessions, but just to recap, we focus on CRM being the area of the front end of the sales cycle and helping us put processes and visibility at that whole front end, where ERP is on the back end. We promote CRM being the tool for sharing and leveraging information, more for team selling, really promoting the team selling concept. Single source of the truth. Customer experience, that's another thing we promote in the why, is how the customers will perceive us as a company when we're sharing and leveraging and we're all on the same page. I think this leads to a better customer experience. And then ultimately, the why is that this can be your competitive edge. You're going to have data now at your fingertips to make good business decisions. And there's another thing another area about the why that I've been promoting a little bit, and that's the why not. You got the why, but then you got the why not to kind of ease the pain. And what I'm talking about the why not is, most companies are doing the things that we're asking them to do in CRM, but they're doing it in their own ways via, you give a classic example, right? I mean, the Excel spreadsheets. They're updating Excel spreadsheets, or they've got their contacts in some system as an island or silo of database for contacts, but they're doing something already. And all we're saying is, why not? Why not use CRM instead? So shift what you're doing, just do it in CRM, and there's just so many byproducts to that. And it goes back to the byproducts of the why. So if we address the why not do it in CRM? I think that then leads into the promoting and getting them to accept the why.
Makes sense to me. So going back to the training component, what's the most important thing when conducting training, Brian?
I mean, if I had to give you, top level answer, I would say the interaction and the exercises. Maybe that's two answers. The interaction and the exercises. I think it's so important that the training is set up with these day in the life scripts that they can relate to, right? So we've got these day in the life scripts that they're living every day. So they get it. And then we show them in CRM how they can use CRM in their day in the life with these exercises that they have to go do and make it interactive. I think it's so important. So it shouldn't be where they're just sitting there watching you or the trainer do the they need to watch and then they need to go do. The training must, again, address the what's in it for me, because they're always going to be asking that in the back of their head. And if we go back to the why not, which I just mentioned a second ago, well, why not? You're already doing this already. We're going to ask you to do it in CRM. We're going to show you how to do it. We're going to show you the value of that and the why. And we're going to position it in the day in the life for what you're doing already. So it just hopefully ties that all together. But the interaction and the exercises in training, I think, are a must have. You must position training in that kind of environment.
So once things are up and running, I know the next step kind of for you is to monitor, right? To monitor the success, to monitor how things are going. How can you do that without appearing to look like you're looking over people's shoulders?
Question. So you talk about the monitoring. So again, just to reiterate, we say set the expectations, right? We say train on the expectations, not only the how, but the why. And then another leg to that is monitor the expectations. So when I'm talking about monitoring at this stage, okay, I'm talking about monitoring against the expectations. And again, I believe you can do that without appearing to be Big Brother. Remember, the team has signed off on these expectations of the value of what CRM can bring to the team. And so we set the expectations, they've signed off on it, we've now trained them, and now we're monitoring. So it's really monitoring to make sure the team is doing what they've agreed to and address why they're not. It might be that they need additional training. It might not be that they're not comfortable with the why or they haven't connected the dots. And so, I don't believe it's positioned or could be viewed as Big Brother. It's really just monitoring as a company that they're living up to what we say we're going to do. And is there other things that we need to address of why we're not doing what we say we needed to do? So really the monitoring is against the expectations and not against the individual, so to speak, but hey, what's going on here and how can I help?
It seems to me that stage is critical. Monitoring against the expectations seems critical because if you don't catch those things now, perhaps those issues that you're not catching or seeing will snowball down the road.
No question. That's what I said earlier, right? The critical time in the long-term adoption of CRM is in that first, let's say 90 days, that first out of the gate. The gates are open and their horses are down the road at the Kentucky Derby. That first start is so important. And so, you've got to monitor that and you got to make sure everyone's aligned. And again, people are different stages of learning. They're different stages of acceptance. So it's making sure that we're all moving in the right direction. That first, again, 90 days is so critical.
So you've talked about monitoring. Coaching is also part of this process. So what's the difference between monitoring and coaching? Are they cousins or is that what you think of it?
I don't know if they're kissing. They may be kissing cousins, yeah.
Oh, kissing cousins. This is getting interesting.
Great question. And so I believe there is a difference. I believe, at the highest level, believe you must monitor to ultimately coach, right? Monitoring is gathering information to make sure your team, again, is following those expectations in the context of CRM that we're talking about here. So you're monitoring the expectations, right? And then you're coaching the team to make sure that they're following those expectations. It's the blocking and tackling. So a story, a quick little story here. I'll never forget this. And it's kind of, Lindsay, your question here about monitoring and coaching. So I go back to my days prior when I was in sales management, industrial sales company. We rolled out CRM, and I had a very top-notch salesperson who was maybe not as they weren't on the CRM bus, so to speak, in the beginning. And one of our expectations as a company was to use CRM to manage major project pursuit, long sales cycles, very complex. It was that's in CRM's wheelhouse, right, for managing those type of project pursuits. So there was a project that came up that was being purchased ultimately and engineered out of our territory. We were an exclusive rep for a manufacturer. The end user, where the product was going, was ultimately in our territory, but the engineering and purchasing was out of our territory. So they weren't using the CRM for that. And so I, was monitoring that and ultimately coached the salesperson and worked with them on using CRM to do what we said we needed to do with CRM, and that is manage these major projects. And I coached them through that process. And ultimately, long story short, that salesperson got it. They saw the value of this because at the end, what happened was, money actually was a driver here. What happened was when the orders were released, they were released out of our territory, and that salesperson lost quite a bit of commission. They only got destination credit. Well, they didn't get the engineering credit, which is 25% of the project. Well, now guess what? In CRM, we had all the documentation of all that the salesperson had done in pursuit of that project. And we were able to supply that to the manufacturer and instantly show justification for giving us additional commission for that. So to say the least, that salesperson was kind of a believer at the end of this. But we used that example and we coached based on the expectation, and it was a positive result at the end.
That's amazing. The sales rep probably was a fan of yours for life after that.
Well, yeah, that again, I leveraged that salesperson and they became, it took a little time, but I guess the moral of the story is back to the coaching and the monitoring and coaching. That was, monitoring that they weren't using it. There was a huge project and coached them on how to use it, and they got comfortable with it, and it showed to be we got a return out of that.
So who does the coaching and how can you do it? I realize this is a very big question, but how can you do it so it's effective? And, how long is that? Is this an ongoing thing, short-term thing?
Yeah, that is a big question. I mean, again, the clients that I've been involved with, I typically the key word there is start the coaching with a focus on working with the managers, the sales managers, the mid-level managers. They've got the outside sales team, let's say you got the managers and you got executives. I really like working and coaching the managers who ultimately are going to coach their sales team. The goal there is to help coach them on how to be better coaches with the data. This is new to them on this kind of data. They've never had this amount of data at their fingertips that they can use to more effectively monitor and then ultimately coach. So I believe it should ultimately, my goal is to turn the keys over to them, that they're now comfortable with the coaching side. But at the end of the day, the coaching needs to become part of the SOP, standard operating procedures for managers with their sales team. Managers should always be coaching, using, again, the CRM data against the expectations and coaching the team against that. So it needs to become part of that SOP, which, again, is a lot of times different in companies, but I believe coaching the managers and getting them, and then ultimately they're coaching the sales team.
Train the trainers, coach.
Yeah, train the trainers, coach the coaches.
Coach the coaches.
But I mean, you can draw so many analogies to that in real world from the sporting, I look at this a lot of times from a sporting perspective. I mean, you got coaches and coaches are coaching, but they're always coaching, it's constant. It's sharpening your craft, right? I mean, it's sharpening your saw, so to speak, sharpening the craft, honing in, and it's constantly coaching. And again, the nice thing with CRM, once this gets up and running, is you've got data now. You coach against those expectations. That's the important thing. You've got to have expectations, so you can coach against that.
So how important are these initial months after launch?
Yeah, I think it, like I said earlier, it's so important. Again, it just sets the stage for long-term success. You're changing culture, right? CRM stands for customer relationship management, but I might have mentioned in previous discussions, it's really change management. It's change management. You're changing changing things, right? It's who moved my cheese. And so the first 3 to 6 months after launch is just so important. And again, you just gotta, it's all hands on deck. It's not a one and done. I mean, training is not a one and done. You need to have that continuing training, like I said earlier. And it's not just it, we classify it as maybe training, but it's more advancement. It's moving, kicking the can down the road, so to speak. It's advancing CRM and making it part of your standard operating procedure as a company.
So the big question is the CEO for CRM. What is the role they're playing in all of this, and some of the challenges they can expect to run up against? Probably a lot, but
Yeah, yeah, it's okay. But let's back up to the question.
sure.
If I'm understanding correct, the challenges during this stage being the training. If that's what we're talking about, the CEO for CRM needs to kick it off, and they need to just get the team motivated about this. But I don't believe there's a whole lot of challenges for the CO for CRM at this stage. Why? Because it's kind of like a party after all the hard work, so to speak. Let's unveil the system. We've worked really hard on, setting, deciding we're going to do CRM. We made the evaluation of who we're going to go with. We've designed the system. We've tested it. We've worked through all the processes, and now we're unveiling. The training is like the unveiling of the system. Yes, there's going to be some apprehension. Obviously, there's going to be, okay, what's this all about? What's this going to be? Again, that's the importance of the why. But also there's excitement. I typically see some excitement, whether it's good excitement. There's excitement of, okay, this is new. So I don't see again, yes, they are, but I don't see big challenges for the CEO for CRM at this stage. They got to make sure the training's set up. You got to make sure your super users are all in sync and they're capable of delivering the training and all of that. But at the end of the day, I don't think those are huge challenges. The challenges will be after the training. It's like the party's over, now I got to clean up, right? Make sure that the team doesn't revert back to what they've already been doing and not doing what they need to be doing with CRM. That's where the real challenges are, which might be another topic for another day. Talking about the training side, I don't see a whole lot of huge challenges for the CEO for CRM at this stage.
So let's talk about some of the common mistakes that companies tend to make after launch.
Yeah. After launch, they don't spend the time or the commitment on training and coaching after the initial training. Bottom line, they're like, okay, we're done. We've unveiled CRM, we've unveiled it. We've trained the team. We've given them initial training. We're done. Now I need to see return on investment. It just doesn't happen like that. Again, change management, right? They don't see CRM becoming that single source of the truth. They revert maybe back. Some people revert, which it just kills me when I see this. They revert back to the way they were doing it before, because that was their security blanket with Excel sheets. You've got to continue the training, and again, not only the training, but the reinforcement and the getting the team socializing it. Continuing to socialize CRM within your company. That this is good for the company. This is how we're going to manage our business. This is how we're going to grow our business. And a lot of companies maybe don't take that serious, or ultimately spend the time and commitment to do that, or what's needed to do that.
So continuous improvement with CRM. You said this earlier. This isn't just a one and done process. And you've said, you've related this to a marathon before. So talk about that. So they get through the training, they do everything right, but they're not done, right?
Yeah.
This is an ongoing process.
And that's okay. Every company's different. And I get asked this a lot. You need to have a roadmap for phase 2, which typically what comes out of that audit is what is phase 2 typically. So we have kind of a roadmap, but as far as truly starting it and then ultimately implementing it within the team, my answer is you need to sign off and make sure that you're doing phase 1 expectations to the level that needs to be done before you even think about phase 2. So if you've laid out 3 to 5 things that you really want to do in phase 1, don't look at going to phase 2 or jump the gun on going to phase 2 until you've mastered those. I know it's probably a pretty simple answer, but I think it's true. Don't get ahead of your skis, so to speak, right? Just take the course. And again, every company's different. So the next question you might ask is, what do I typically see with that? As short as maybe 6 months, which is very short, to probably more like a year. I mean, plus or minus some months there. And it also depends on the complexity of your phase one. Some companies might have a little bit more complexity that they put into phase one. So a lot of variables there.
A question for you, kind of related to that. When does the CEO for CRM roles end, or does it not end?
Oh, that's easy. It doesn't end. It never ends. Now, they might pass the torch to someone else, another CEO for CRM. But there, in my mind, there always needs to be a CEO for CRM within the company if you want the adoption and the buy-in. Someone at the helm driving the why, driving the processes, and driving the change management. Actually, I have a client I started working with about 4 or 5 years ago, and their title was VP of Sales. So if you went into their LinkedIn and you looked them up on LinkedIn, their title was VP of Sales. If you go today and look up that person's title, it's VP of Sales / CEO for CRM. Now, that person truly adopted that title and the philosophy. And coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, that company is having very good success with CRM. Have they had their challenges? Yes, but they're doing well. And I believe that's common denominator is they've got this person at the management level that has actually put their CEO for CRM on their title. And it's actually on their title on LinkedIn.
That's great. I think that's all I have for you today, Brian.
Come on, let's talk some more.
Well, there's a lot of great topics if we want to do some future programs for those listening, but I think we'll wrap up today's. So thank you so much for sharing your insights on the rollout phase.
Thank you, Lindsay.